The dynamic between comic book characters. This can sometimes be even more important than the characters themselves. Because you see, although each and every character is on their own very important and very compelling, it's often the dynamics they have with other characters that makes them that much more compelling. Batman and the Joker, Superman and Batman, Superman and Lex Luthor, Green Lantern and Hawkgirl. While yes, each of these characters on their own are very awesome and definitely very compelling, when you match them up with each other, it enhances their character and increases the amount of stories you're able to tell. However, not only that, it deepens the level of storytelling you're able to do involving those characters. And sometimes you're able to bring together two totally different characters to tell a very compelling and deep story that not only enhances the overall project they are involved in, but it actually enhances both characters for the better. And while yes, a lot of the dynamics I did name definitely do that to a T, there is one dynamic in the DCAU that I feel like does not get talked about nearly enough. And that's why today we're talking Batman and Amanda Waller had the perfect dynamic in the DCAU. But before we get into anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Alright, Batman and Amanda Waller. So first and foremost, we have to understand these characters before they interact in the DCAU. Because while yes, their interactions are important, I truly believe one of the most important things when bringing together two different characters in order to establish their dynamic is establishing them as a character on their own. That way they are able to stand on their own as an amazing character. However, it just adds even more to the overall story when these two character dynamics clash together, because then they combine to each enhance what the other may lack. Or if neither is lacking anything, it just enhances everything about each character, which can lead to some of the best stories we ever got. Obviously, you all know Batman from the animated series, New Adventures of Batman. He is the person who built the DCAU. He is without a doubt the main character of the DCAU. So he quite literally is the most established going into Justice League Unlimited. So having to pair someone up against Batman is very, very difficult. However, not only are they able to accomplish this, they are able to accomplish this to a level where Amanda Waller's dynamic with Batman truly is up there with his dynamic with Superman, and could even be up there with his dynamic with the Joker. That is how good his relationship is with Amanda Waller. But why exactly is that? Well, you see, when Amanda Waller is first getting established, she is established as a very powerful character, a very influential character. She matters. She is in the capacity that Batman essentially is in the Justice League. She is the head of the organization of Cadmus. She has people at Washington that go to her for answers. She has a line that leads directly to the president, showing just how important this character is. And in her very first appearance, she came off as cruel. She came off as stern. She came off as strong. And that was in her appearance in the Ultimate episode, where we do see she's involved in human cloning, human experimentation, which are very cruel acts. So right away, we are meant to not like this character. She is someone who is going to be opposing the Justice League. And in her very first episode appearance, she does just that, because she pulls up on 4 members of the Justice League, 3 of which are the DC Trinity, and she tells them that the Ultimate are government property and they are to be turned over immediately. And she then proceeds to pull a bunch of guns on the Justice League. And while yes, Batman has that awesome line where he says, "Mine are bigger than yours," because Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and Superman all step in front of one of the Ultimen, saying that they will not let him go. He will be under the protection of the Justice League. And yes, she does stand down during this moment. She is still able to establish that she is going toe-to-toe with the Justice League. And not just the Justice League, the most powerful and capable members in the Justice League. Not to mention 3 of the most important and also 3 of the founding members. However, she would not let this defeat go without some sort of a victory, because although she does decide to withdraw all her troops and not battle against the Trinity plus Aquaman in this moment, she does get the other Ultimen to in the end go with her and accepts that one of them will just remain with the League until he does pass on. Because their genetic makeup is not stable, they're going to all pass away relatively soon anyway, so she doesn't see this loss as that big of a deal. However, still, she cannot stand the fact of losing at all, so when Batman decides to make a remark to her, asking who she thinks she is, what she thinks they're all doing, she decides to, with only a couple of words, totally shell-shock Batman, and for the first time ever in the DCAU, put this version of Batman multiple steps behind. You see, this Batman thrives on being ahead of the game, on being prepared for everything. However, in this moment, he is not expecting Amanda Waller, after standing down to him and the other League members, to look at him and call him a rich boy. And in this moment, Batman has to come to terms that this person that he knows nothing about, aside from the fact that she is involved in some very nefarious activities alongside the US government, now knows his secret identity. One of the most closely guarded secrets that he has. A secret, mind you, that no one in the founding members of the Justice League knew other than Superman up until the finale of the original Justice League show, showcasing how closely guarded this secret truly is. So right off the bat, Amanda Waller is established as someone that not only is very scary, not only is very strong and capable, but has the ability to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of Batman, which in the DCAU specifically almost never happens. You see, Batman quite literally makes a living off of being 1 to 2 steps ahead of people. This is how he is able to regularly get the better of Lex Luthor, who for all intents and purposes should absolutely never get one-upped by Batman, because from an IQ standpoint, Lex Luthor has quite literally one of the highest IQs in all of DC, and definitely a higher IQ than Batman, but yet he still loses. And this is because Batman prides himself on always being multiple steps ahead. However, introducing Amanda Waller in this way and putting the proverbial main character of the DCAU in such a compromised position as a result of Amanda Waller right away showcases how valuable Amanda Waller is to Cadmus, to the US government, and how formidable of an adversary she and her organization are going to be for the Justice League. And that is just in her first appearance. And this sentiment continues each and every time she appears. You see, although she does get the upper hand with Batman, he cannot let that slide. So we do eventually see Batman pull up on Amanda Waller. And he doesn't just pull up where she works, he decides to go right to her house in the morning. As soon as she gets out of the shower, she can't even reach for her own towel, because as she does, you see Batman's hand go to give her a towel, and she is absolutely mind blown. Not only does this person know where she lives, he had the audacity to disconnect all of her security and walk right into her bathroom in quite literally the most vulnerable state she could be in, asserting that although she knows a lot about Batman and she put Batman in a pretty compromised position, Batman is not going to let that slide. And now he is going to put her in a compromised position. And we see this. As soon as she gets out of the shower, Batman starts rambling off all of her resume, who she is, her name, where she went to college, even her GPA, her accolades, moving through the military, how she became an established member of Cadmus, and then he gets into some of her more extreme nefarious activities like human cloning, weapons, and everything that Cadmus gets involved in, and he even presses her on this, saying, "What do you think you're doing? I don't know why you think you can do this." And in this moment, she does not let herself get intimidated by Batman. Instead, she pushes back and states that Cadmus is justified, that Cadmus is there to keep the Justice League in check. And even when Batman almost tries to threaten her, saying that the Justice League would take down Cadmus if they pose a threat, she doubles down and says Cadmus is here to protect the world from a very real threat, the Justice League. That is why we are here. You see, when Superman decided to help grant Lex Luthor a pardon for helping with the Justice Lord situation, we were told everything that happened. And we found out what would happen if the Justice League went rogue. And not only did we find out about what happened on their planet, we ran hundreds of simulations to determine what would happen if you turned on us. And even though Batman tries to dismiss this fact, she keeps hammering it home and says if the Justice League ever turned on humanity, humanity would be wiped out. But that was before we came around. That was before Cadmus, saying in this moment, although you came here to threaten me, and although you came here to almost assert your dominance over myself and over my organization of Cadmus, now stating that just because you know who I am and what organization I work for, rattling off some of my accolades, you think that changes the fact that we are here to put a stop to the Justice League? And while yes, in this moment, she does quite literally threaten Batman about bringing him into the light and letting everyone know what he's been up to as Bruce Wayne / Batman, Batman does also press her in this moment and says, fine, you want to bring me into the light? Then we'll do it together and we'll see who the public sides with. And while in this moment, she does somewhat backtrack a little bit because by this point, the Justice League is in pretty good standing with public perception, and Cadmus, number one, isn't that well known, and number two, they haven't done anything that great. In fact, a lot of the things they had done that could be proven are pretty cruel by that point. So if they both were revealed to the public, I think most people would be on the side of the Justice League. However, still knowing this, she still decides to press Batman and leaves off with saying, we are still here to put a stop to you if it becomes necessary one day. And Batman is forced to leave. And then we do see her do a couple roundtables where she is able to control multiple pretty strong people into doing what she wants. She has Professor Hamilton. She even has Hugo Strange there, who a lot of people thought died after he betrayed Joker, Two-Face, and Penguin. However, he does appear briefly, which probably explains how Amanda Waller was able to obtain the information of Batman's identity. If someone wants into Cadmus, they need to provide something that is very valuable to Cadmus to justify them being part of the organization. Emil Hamilton helped create the Supergirl clone, which definitely valuable. However, what might be even more valuable than that is quite literally the secret identity of Batman, the leader of the Justice League, and that also helps explain where the Justice League quite literally gets all of their money for everything. Until Green Arrow comes, then he probably helps out a little, but still. You just uncovered the leader of the Justice League and also all of the Justice League's financial backings. Yes, Hugo Strange, you are now an accepted member of Cadmus. However, not only is she able to control all of these very capable people, she also was the person who helped create Doomsday. And while yes, this doesn't do anything good, it is still quite remarkable that she was involved in creating something that was quite literally able to take out the Justice Lords, and only when Justice Lord Superman decided to fry Doomsday's brain were they able to defeat him. And when we see later on our version of Superman go face to face with Doomsday, he is not able to fully defeat him, only being able to trap him within molten rock and then send him to the Phantom Zone. So the fact that Amanda Waller was involved in creating a Supergirl clone who is able to go toe to toe with multiple members of the Justice League, including Supergirl, and creating the Ultimen, who, mind you, were so powerful that they went toe-to-toe with the Trinity of DC and Aquaman, and in some ways were winning. While yes, I can agree the Justice League were somewhat holding back in some of these moments, it is still very impressive that this army created by Amanda Waller was able to go toe-to-toe with some of the most competent and capable characters in the Justice League. And not only that, after their DNA does degrade and they do pass away, she is able to have the Ultimen mass-produced, and not only that, is able to erase all of their consciousness so that they follow singular orders. When Supergirl's clone Galatea is ordered to attack the Watchtower, she takes an army of the Ultimate, and we see by simply uttering simple commands to them, they follow those commands to a T. Take down the Justice League, and then all of the Ultimen start to systematically take down the Justice League. And there are quite literally hundreds of Ultimate. There are so many of them. I think there were 18 or 19 missiles that contained multiple teams of the Ultimate. So having that much power at your disposal definitely shows how competent and capable you are as a character. However, it doesn't stop there. Not only is she able to coordinate these attacks against the Justice League, being able to control multiple very powerful clones of very powerful characters in the DC universe, she also does not stand down when Batman continues to press her. During the Doomsday Sanction episode, a missile is fired at San Volcaro Island, where Superman, Doomsday, and other Justice League members are. However, more importantly, a lot of citizens are still there, as the Justice League arrive there to help evacuate the entire island. However, the island was not completely evacuated by this point, so a kryptonite-laced nuke would be extremely devastating. And when this happens, Batman quite literally decides to call Amanda Waller on her phone that is designated for the president. So in this moment, not only do we find out that Amanda Waller has access to the president virtually whenever she wants, as she can pick up a phone and connect directly to him, Batman is able to hack into that phone and is able to talk one-on-one with Amanda Waller. And right away, he presses her about this missile. However, in this moment, although she does somewhat push back on Batman, by the end of the conversation, she simply states, "You do what you need to do, and I'll do what I need to do." And by the time they both hang up the phone, Batman is able to surmise by Amanda Waller's reaction and by the short words that she said that she had no idea that the missile was fired, showing Batman has a very high level of understanding for this person. And considering she is probably his most formidable adversary in all of Justice League Unlimited, that makes sense that Batman would study his enemy, especially an enemy who is able to obtain such highly classified information, such pertinent information to himself and the overall Justice League. And in this moment, Amanda Waller actually shows some redeeming qualities, as she quite literally goes after the general who fired this missile, and she is very much so pissed off that he even did this, and she continues to order him to disengage. However, he simply states he can't. All the safety aborts have already been disengaged. It is happening. We are killing 3 birds with 1 stone. And all she can do is simply look back and watch. However, before a bunch of casualties are going to happen in this moment as a result of Cadmus screwing up, Batman is able to stop the missile. And in this moment, Amanda Waller for the first time sees that maybe the Justice League isn't so bad. Or at the very least, maybe Batman isn't so bad. And this would start a turning point for Amanda Waller moving forward. And while yes, they do tend to clash multiple times going forward, like when the Justice League Watchtower is taken over and fires upon Cadmus, Batman quite literally goes and confronts Amanda Waller. And he says to her, "I don't know why you of all people are believing the Justice League would fire upon you." And at first, she is very standoffish. At first, she is believing in the claims that the Justice League was behind this. The beam quite literally came from the Watchtower. However, Batman very smartly points out that Cadmus has been under surveillance by the Justice League for months. They knew that Cadmus was gone. And although Amanda Waller once again pushes back and says that it was simply a warning shot, something you did because we kidnapped your man, the Question, and that Batman very quickly says, "That is idiotic. You know we would never do that." And then he points out there are very few people who were smart enough to take over the Watchtower systems. 2 of those people were already on the Watchtower. So Amanda Waller then surmises it must have been Luthor. But why would he do that? All he wants is to be president. And Batman points out that is not all he wants. This is Lex Luthor. He has ulterior motives. Before you come at the Justice League for doing this, please do more research. Please, at the very least, look into Lex Luthor. And then he leaves. And instead of going after Batman or other members of the Justice League, she decides in this moment to halt the attack on the Watchtower, which, mind you, was going on by this point because she assumed the Justice League was guilty. However, after this development and interaction, she decides to at the very least halt it for now, and then decides to do a deep dive on Lex Luthor. And once she does this, she finds that Lex has been stealing multiple documents from Cadmus, has been taking classified information, classified technology that had been deemed too dangerous, and he had been stockpiling it. So in this moment, not only does she order the Ultimen and Galatea to halt, she orders them to retreat and totally cancel their attack because she decided that the Justice League was not guilty. However, this is not where it ends. She decides to confront Lex Luthor, and in this moment, she goes there with Batman. And yes, Batman is able to deduce things a little bit more quickly than Amanda Waller, so he is able to arrive a little bit quicker than Waller does. However, before he can stop Lex, he is thrown out of a window because this is Lex Luthor, who does have the strength of Brainiac, as by this point, he does have Brainiac within him, and he is about to manifest, which is why he was trying to download himself into the android's body to give himself the ultimate superpowers. But before he can, Amanda Waller finally shows up and decides to use an experimental weapon to totally disintegrate this superpowered godly body. And while in this moment, she does proclaim to Lex that she was arrogant enough to believe she on her own, and maybe with the help of Batman, could bring down Lex. As she stands up, she proclaims, "But I didn't want to bet everything on that, so I decided to make a stop." And then that is when we see Batman come up from being thrown out the window, and alongside him is the rest of the Justice League. The full original 7 founding members that did turn themselves in to the US government has now been freed because Amanda Waller went there, explained the whole situation, and now is trusting in the Justice League to help solve this problem. And in this moment, she is saved by multiple members of the Justice League. And not only that, she watches them go toe-to-toe with Lex Luthor to save the world. So someone she had allied herself with is now attempting to not only destroy the world, but rewrite all of reality, change all of space and time to something that can benefit himself. However, these heroes are standing against him, trying to oppose what he is trying to do, showing her once and for all that these heroes are actually heroes, and they aren't people to just be feared. And while in this moment she does consider bringing down a huge nuke strike that could potentially take out Lex, she decides to have faith in the Justice League. She decides to believe in the fact that these 7 heroes, the founding members of the Justice League, the greatest superhero force on the earth, will be able to stop this great threat. So she, for one of the first times ever, decides to put fate into other people's hands. She decides to believe in them. She decides to have faith in not only the Justice League, but more importantly, in Batman, as Batman has been the one to persuade her multiple times and show her that they can do good and they can be a force for good. And it's proven right, as they do defeat Lex in the end. And this character growth for Amanda Waller definitely shows, as later on in season 3, General Eiling tries to go to Amanda Waller and reignite Cadmus to what it used to be, a fighting force to go against the Justice League. However, she completely shuts this down. She says now they are working with the Justice League. She is almost a liaison by this point between the US government and the Justice League, trying to establish and maintain good relationships with the League. Instead of trying to combat the League, she is now in charge of trying to work collaboratively with the Justice League. And we actually see this in the flashbacks in Epilogue. And in this moment, Ace breaks out. She establishes a new Royal Flush Gang, and her powers have grown to the point where she can quite literally warp reality. That is how she was able to make a new Royal Flush Gang. However, everything around her is also beginning to warp and will eventually lead to the end of the world, as she can't fully control them. So by this point, Amanda Waller does pull up, and she sees multiple members of the Justice League, 2 of which are founding members, one being Hawkgirl and one being Batman. And in this moment, Amanda Waller walks right up to Batman, explains the situation of what's going on with Ace, and takes out a briefcase and then states that this is the only device that is going to be able to stop Ace. In order to stop her, you're going to have to kill her. And Amanda Waller, from just a season ago, would not have trusted Batman with this. Not only would she not have trusted Batman to do this, she probably wouldn't have even trusted Batman with this information. She would have definitely established her own team to take down Ace, and probably would have surmised a way to distract the Justice League to get them away in this moment. However, she doesn't do that. She instead decides to trust once again in the Justice League. But even more than that, to trust in the Batman, in the person she has grown to respect the most, the hero amongst heroes, the mere mortal amongst gods walking amongst men. And he is the one who continues to stand above them all. He is the one who time and time again shows that his wit and determination are enough to save the day. And so he takes the device, and in this moment he says he is going to take Ace down, but he doesn't do this. Instead, he throws the device away and he sits beside Ace and he holds her hand and asks her to undo everything she did. And in return for this, he is going to sit there until her time comes, and he stays there the entire time until she passes. And then we see him walk out holding Ace's dead body. And Amanda Waller quite literally tells this to Terry McGinnis in the future. Instead of taking out Ace, which would have objectively been the right thing to do, and objectively would have been the easier thing to do, he sat there and waited with her until her time came. And he decided to empathize with her and decided to simply ask her to undo everything she did. And because of the relationship he had established with Ace by that point, she decided to do it. And not only did she do it, all she asked in return was that Batman simply sit with her on the swings so she didn't die alone. And Batman, of course, did this. And they share in a very sentimental moment where Batman acknowledges that Ace had her childhood taken away, and Ace acknowledges that Batman had his childhood taken away as well. And this is why they had such a strong bond. And Amanda Waller sees that Batman not only was able to stop this incredibly intense situation, but he was able to do it in a non-violent way, showing not only is he incredibly capable, incredibly smart, but he is also incredibly kind. And this would lead Amanda Waller to always believing in not only the Justice League, but even more so Batman himself. So much so that by the time he was starting to get older, she recognized this to the point where she surmised the world could not survive without a Batman. So she took it upon herself to have Batman's DNA cloned in a way to where he would have a genetic son in the world. But that wasn't enough for Amanda Waller because she needed to fully recreate the story of Batman. So she decided, as part of his backstory was tragedy, she had to enact that very same tragedy upon this newborn son of Batman. And she did this by hiring an assassin to kill Terry McGinnis's parents. However, luckily for her, the assassin decides not to go through with it, and Amanda Waller in this moment does acknowledge it was right that the assassin didn't do it because although her cause was somewhat noble, she wanted Batman to always be around because of how much the world needs him. She would have been lying in the face of everything Batman stood for if she had gone through with it. So she was ultimately saved by the assassin backing out of everything, and then she did become much more hands-off, and she never enabled herself to do anything nefarious like that again. However, the mere fact that she went from totally opposing the Justice League and being so standoffish that she would threaten to out Batman's identity, all the way to the point where she decided to recreate and reproduce Batman because she believed the world could not survive without him, shows a level of character growth and a massive character arc that I don't know anyone else had in the entire DCAU. And that is why these two characters of Batman and Amanda Waller, in my opinion, have one of, if not the best dynamic in the entire DCAU. But I'm interested to hear from all of you. Do you agree with my take that Amanda Waller and Batman have one of the best dynamics in the DCAU? And if not, who would you put up there for best dynamic in the entire DCAU? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.